saying that, I think.
Do you find it kind of surprising or pleasing, maybe, that, I mean, a lot of very young musicians are now referencing the 70s, you know, maybe bands or tracks like, Magazine, Shot by Both Sides, or Southern Death Cult, which you also did, which have maybe been forgotten for a decade or ignored or brushed away, and suddenly these really young guys,
gems from the vault,
bringing them out and using them as references.
That's great. Sure. I mean, if it's difficult to know if there's a sort of an overall sense in which that will always happen. I mean, I suppose. I mean, after a certain period of time, and I suppose that varies depending on which sort of art form one's talking about. That after a certain period of time, work achieves cult, vintage, antique status, perhaps.
You mentioned Van. I don't think I planned to get to him so soon, but he looms large because he's done, I think, 13 albums.
I think it's about 15 now, actually.
15. And you're now putting together a box set, I think.
There's some great stuff, and great bands, great playing, great performances. No, but essentially, it seemed to be songs that were performed during various album sessions at the time that just didn't make it to the albums.
Yeah.
But that's not to say they weren't good enough. They were just more than was needed. And so there are a lot of great songs there. But in terms of when you say an ongoing box set, who knows? I don't know. You know, it may not see the light of day. That's something to be discussed, as it were. I mean, who knows? But there's a lot of very good stuff there, which was fabulous fun to work on, because it was just great to hear, and also to hear when you put on the multi-tracks, the tape's running the whole time, as it always has been, so you're hearing conversations, so you're getting the atmosphere of what's happening in the studio. So it was interesting. A lot of the tapes were unlabeled, so there was a lot of detective work went on, and Van's memory is incredible. I mean, we'd talk about a particular session and he'd remember all the musicians. I mean, I had no idea. I could tell from some of the voices. I mean, I know David Hayes, the bass player, very well. I could recognise his voice, one or two other people, but he was right there with all the names of all the people that worked on stuff 30 years ago. So but there's a lot of great stuff. Yes.
I can remember looking at a picture of you in Studio Sound, probably it was, and sitting in front of the new board at the Manor.
Oh yeah, at the Manor, was it?
Yeah, that's when I was in some toilet 8-track recording a funk band, thinking that's the guy I want to be there. I mean, how did it feel to be involved? Because the Manor and the Townhouse were very much at the cutting edge then.
I guess so. Yes, I mean, it was great fun. I mean, I was still learning. You know, I'd only been engineering. When I was at the Manor, which was 76, I'd only been engineering probably for 4 years. Still wondering, you know, was I any good? And still kind of learning about what to do. I'm still learning now, you know, and that's not false modesty. I'm still checking out new stuff all the time, because technology enables us to do new stuff. You know? No, the Manor was great. I mean, it was a unique house, had a tremendous atmosphere, and some great acts went through the studio.
Was there a conscious attempt to kind of push studios more in the direction that you wanted for the sound? Because I mean, before, studios have still been designed a little bit by men in white coats, if then later modified by the people that worked in them. And here you guys were. You were actually working. You were actually the engineers, the producers.
It wasn't a conscious attempt to be cutting edge. We just wanted it to be really good. But that leads us on to the SSL conversation.
Yeah.
Because there were 2 studios here, and we decided to put a Helios in Studio 1. But for ages, Phil and I sat around trying to decide what to put in Studio 2, because we wanted something different. It was that idea of offering clients a choice and different sorts of consoles. And essentially at that time, there was a choice between Neve, Cadac, MCI and Harrison. I think that's all there was, pretty much, of the sort of the main contenders. And although they were all good consoles, Phil and I both weren't terribly knocked out with the idea of having one of those consoles. So we must have spent 6 months trying to think about what to do with Studio 2. Sitting around the kitchen table at the Manor thinking, well, you know, we've got everything else sorted out. What are we going to put in Studio 2? And there was a guy called John, I can't remember his surname, who was doing weekend maintenance at the Manor. His weekday job was working at Stonesfield for what was I presume it was called Solace Technology then, I guess so, but he was working for Colin. And he'd been rabbiting on about these consoles. He was saying, they're really fun. They really should check out these consoles. And we go, yeah, John, never heard of these people. Go away. But in the end, I mean, he was saying, they use really good components, and it's really well laid out, and it's got this, and it's got that. In the end, we thought, oh well, what the hell? Let's just check it out. So Phil and I, and Barbara as well, we all went to meet Colin at Stonesfield, and we just sat down and had a chat, and he just described the console, described the channel strip, and we seemed to have everything in the right place. And because, we accept that now, but one of my complaints about Neve then was ergonomically things just weren't sat right in the channel strip. Things you had to get up to do.
It was made for the classic picture, wasn't it?
Well, I suppose so, yeah. But just ergonomics was something that hadn't been refined, and Colin just seemed to have a good sense of that, the way he was describing the channel strip. And then he started talking about compressors and gates at every channel. This is interesting, and the layout and the tape remote situation. In fact, you had master tape controls in the centre, and you had a ready and monitoring tape machine, in-out monitoring controls, and a ready switch in every channel. I mean, this was revolutionary. There weren't any console manufacturers in 1977, 78 who had tape machine remotes in the desk. Maybe there were some Helios consoles that did, but they were custom, but certainly not on a Neve or a Harris or an MCI, as far as I know. So that was.
And it did make monitoring in the headphones. I mean, it made it quite a tricky balance between the returns and everything. People not hearing themselves.
Well, I mean, Colin invented SuperCue. The fact that the musician could hear what they just played and play along with it and hear what they're about to play before you got to a punching point. If you roll the tape back, normally they could either hear what they were playing live, the input to the console, or to the tape machine, or what was coming back, what they just played. They couldn't hear both at the same time. And Colin's, just out of his own sense of intuition, having worked at the studio they had at Acorn, was it called Acorn? Yeah. He just thought, well, that'd be a good idea. So he built it in. And I mean, to me, that's a revolutionary thing, which we now take for granted, and everyone else has emulated. And auto cue. You stop the tape, and the talkback comes on. I mean, it's just brilliant. Such a simple idea, but nobody had done it. So all of these came. So by this time, I was pretty much sold on the idea. And then he started talking about the automation system. And as I said before, we've been used to using the Allison 65K, or there were several others that worked on the same principle of data which was recorded analog on 2 spare tracks on the multi-track, and you bounce backwards and forwards.
Did you bounce or did you punch in?
Oh, you couldn't punch in on the automation. As far as did you try it? I never tried it actually. No, we just do a pass. But you can only keep 2 versions of the mix, and the time delay. I mean, it was 1/8 of a second, I think, at worst case. So by the time you'd been through a 5 or 6 hour mix, you had to go back and redo all the cuts because they're all coming in and out late, and it was pioneering days and all that. So here was a system that was tied to time code, which we hadn't used before, and worked, and you could keep all these mixes, and it was an auto-locate system as well. I mean, it was just a mega leap forward in sophistication from it.
Where are you headed now then, Mick?
Me?
What's on your horizon?
Well,
for this
get
year?
the studio up and running. The next couple of projects I'm doing is the singer-songwriter from Scotland called Talitha Mackenzie, who's done an album which was produced by Chris Burkett, who you may have met, I don't know. He has a studio in France where he did that. Anyway, I'm mixing that. That's the first thing I'm mixing in my new room. There'll be some additional production as well, some sounds and a bit more playing. And I've got a similar mixing project for a German jazz sax player called René Decker, who's doing an album which is produced by a blues guitarist that I know, Tino Gonzalez. So I'll be mixing that. And he's also got a number of quite eminent players and singers. He's got Courtney Pine's playing on it apparently, and Leanne Carroll's going to sing on it, which may be recorded in my new room. I don't know. It's up in the air at the moment. We'll see. But I last spoke to Tino about it. He said there's a possibility they might do that here rather than go to Germany. So that's the next couple of things.
With such a catalogue under your belt, as it were, or under your fader, do you find that artists come to you and kind of like mention past work, or?
Surprisingly little, actually. I mean, that doesn't happen that often. They might refer to a certain sound.
Yeah.
But I don't know why that is. Maybe because, well, if you want to be creative in an original sense, the last thing you want to do is admit that you're actually influenced by somebody else's work. So there's perhaps a reluctance to want to say, I want the hi-hat sound from that album, or whatever it is, you know. Although some people don't have such qualms, but no, it doesn't have to be that much.